Thank you so much for coming this morning. It's nice to see some new faces today and also others who have attended previously. So welcome to the second Healthy Soils Program workshop. It's put on in partnership with UCCE and the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County. We're also appreciative to have Mission RCD here to support. And so this program is about a grant offered by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. We're here today to help you navigate that grant, to help you apply to that grant, and should you be so lucky as to receive it, which is a good possibility with this grant, then we'll be there to help you implement it as well. So my name is Joel Kramer. I work at the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County as an agricultural
Hello,
specialist.
can anybody hear me?
And for those of you that are on Zoom, please mute yourself until, and if you'd like to speak, go ahead and raise your hand or throw a message in the chat. We also have Cody Hale here from the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County, and she will be monitoring the chat. So again, if you're on Zoom and you'd like to speak, we've got our agenda presented here today, and there's time designated for you to ask those questions after each presenter speaks. So we have 4 presenters today. The first one will be Mary Matava, who's the president of Agriservice. And she will be presenting about the use of compost and mulch to benefit soil health. And we'll be going into some interesting presentations on that. She's got props today to demonstrate that. So for those of you that are online, stay tuned on your video. And following that will be Bachie from the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources Office here in San Diego and Imperial County. And I will be following the 2 of them. So Mary, I will pass the microphone off to you.
Thanks. Whoops. Oh. Turned it off. So thank you very much for coming today. There's nothing I like to talk about more than soils. So so this works out great for me. My name is Mary Matava, and I have a company called Agriservice. We started out in 1978 doing soil testing, mostly for avocado and citrus growers. And in 1995, I started getting in municipal composting. So now we're compost producers, and we produce about 300 tons a day of compost. So, today I'm going to talk a little bit about soils and just some background that I think is really helpful when we do talk about soils. So the first thing that we have to talk about is, why we want healthy soils. And the reason that we want healthy soils is because healthy soils support healthy plants. And
Sorry, I'm just gonna share the screen.
That's okay.
Really quick.
So healthy soil.
Amateur back here.
Okay, healthy soils support healthy plants. And it's really important that we kind of define what a healthy soil is. So the first thing that, I'm not sure what all of those things are popping up for.
Oh, I can remove that.
But what are some, thank you. So one of the things is that we want to look at what the characteristics of healthy soils are. And the first one is that we want our soils to have a granular structure. We want them to have organic matter that's suitable for the types of plants that we're growing. So if you're growing avocados, that's a subtropical, right? And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have the type and amounts of organic matter that you would normally find in a subtropical setting. If I'm growing a desert plant or something that's more acclimated to a Mediterranean climate, I don't need to have as much organic matter. And then we also want to make sure that we have nutrient and water reservoirs that are sufficient for the types of plants that we're growing. And so irrigation is just like a whole nother day-long talk onto itself. But the one thing about irrigation in an area like San Diego that's arid is that if you don't irrigate properly, and that's where, you know, your team comes in helping growers, if you don't irrigate properly, you can do everything else right and it isn't going to make one bit of difference. And then we want to make sure that it has friable good tilth. So that means that when you stick your soil tube in, you know, you can pull it out, you can feel the soil and it crumbles easily, doesn't have an icky smell to it, that kind of thing. So those would be some of the characteristics of healthy soils. Okay, Joel, it's not working. Okay, so this is just an idealized soil profile. And one of the things when I moved here from Oregon that I noticed was that we have like different soil profiles in San Diego County. And that's because, again, we live in an arid environment and we don't get a lot of rainfall. So the amount of rainfall that we get oftentimes determines, it's one of the factors that determines how deep our soils are. Because if we don't have rain, then we don't have like natural plant growth. If we don't have plant growth, then we don't have that organic matter that is forming, right? And most of the organic matter, a lot of the organic matter that forms in your soil naturally, it doesn't come from like leaves falling on the ground. It comes from like root sloughing. So, which I kind of like that term, root sloughing. So as a plant grows and the roots grow, then they actually slough organic matter off into the soil. And that's where a lot of that organic matter is deposited. Oh, there we go. So this will be the shortest soil talk ever, by the way. I used to teach soil, so I could bore everybody for a whole semester. But this is just like touching on a few different things. So what we want to do is when we think about adding organic matter to the soil, whether it's mulch or it's compost as a pre-plant, what we want to think about is that it's not just the organic matter. We have to take the physical characteristics, the chemical characteristics, and the biological characteristics all into account because they all interact with each other. And so if you have, say, a really, really high pH or a really, really low pH, that would be a limiting factor. And until you address that, you really don't see the benefits of adding a lot of fertilizer or organic matter until we really address those limiting factors. So what we're going to talk about a little bit are things like the chemical characteristics. So everybody's heard of pH, right? They've heard of salinity. And I would say that probably in the years that I've worked with avocados, which has been over 40 now, that a lot of the problems that we see with avocados has to do with salinity. And I'm not sure what's going on back here, but it has to do with the salinity. And we get a lot of salt in our water. I was just talking to Rick before, and he was talking about the effect of the desal plant and how that's reduced your salinity probably by about 25%. Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood, 250 parts per million. And so that's a huge, huge benefit to avocados. But it's not just the salinity of the salinity of the water that affects the plant. It's also what kind of soil do we have? How are we irrigating? Are we putting enough water to leach the salts back down beyond the drip line of the plant so that when it gets really hot and we get wind distortion, that also affects the salinity in our soil. So there's like all these different factors that we have to take into account. We can't do much about the salinity of our water source. We're pretty much stuck with either what our wells have or what the water district's giving us. So we have to learn how to manage it. So the other one is the nutrients. And nutrients is like the easiest piece of all. You can go down and get fertilizer from Eddie anytime, right, Eddie?
Correct.
Correct.
At a great price.
Exactly. So that's the easy part, putting on fertilizer. It's these other pieces that are a lot more difficult to. Okay, now it's not working again, Joel. So
I'm here for you.
okay, thank you. Okay, so pH, the importance of pH is that at different pH ranges, we have different uptake of nutrients and availability of nutrients. And so avocados and citrus tend to like something on a slightly more acid pH, so under 7. And so it's a really good idea before you start anything to go ahead and have a complete soil test done. There's labs around. San Diego Ag Lab is up in Fallbrook, and then there's some other labs that you can send samples out to. Use one from California though, because if you go back east for a lab, a lot of times they do tests differently and they're not used to working with arid soil. So it's really important that you work with somebody that understands arid soils. But it's really important to do this because when when you put on mulch or compost, you want to make sure that you're addressing these chemical issues as well. And the lab will be able to tell you that. And during the break, I brought a soil tube. So in case any of you haven't ever taken soil samples before, during the break, I'll show you how to take a soil sample. Because it's really important that you take it correctly. Okay, next one. So the next thing I was going to talk about are the physical characteristics of the soil. And when we talk about the physical characteristics, we talk mainly about texture and structure, and that texture of the soil and the structure of the soil are what's going to determine if I've got good drainage or if you've got good drainage, and also compaction. So that's huge. And so the first thing that we talk about, if you can take this to the next slide, is soil texture. And soil texture, just to put it into perspective, I've asked Farm Bureau to get a wireless thing so we don't have to hold a microphone. Oh, thank you. So here's my beach ball. If you can imagine that this is the size of a grain of sand, like on the beach, this ball, sand particles go from about this size right here up to the size of the ball. And they're solid. Silt particles, and they're pretty chemically inactive. Silt particles are also solid, and they're about the tenth the size of the smallest grain of sand. But what's really interesting is the clay particles. Now, do any of you have clay in your soil? Oh, wow. Okay. And you probably think, oh, clay, that's really hard to deal with, right? But clay is the magic part of soil. So where it is not a solid particle, but it's actually a crystal. And so when you have clay in your soil, it's also chemically active. So it acts as kind of a magnet, and it helps hold nutrients from leaching. So it's especially good at holding nutrients like potassium, calcium, and magnesium. And so having those clay particles isn't necessarily bad. Where we run into problems with the clay particles is where we don't have good structure in our soil. I didn't even have to ask you to change. And so,
Ring that bell.
so anyway, with soil structure, what we want to do is we want a granular structure. Remember at the very beginning, I said a granular structure is what's important for soil. And so we want that granular structure. So the way that we get that is we bind clay particles together. And when we bind clay particles together, instead of having a platy soil, and I'm going to pass around, this is a sample of soil. And I don't even really call this soil, I call it a mineral deposit. This is what a true clay looks like. So if your soil doesn't look like that, then it's probably manageable, because even this is manageable over time. But what we want to do is bind these clay particles together. So instead of having that platy soil, now we have something where water can move through. The problem with a platy soil is the attraction of water to the clay, to that platelet, is stronger than the action of gravity. So you never get water leaching through. You have water moving in a capillary motion through the soil. And that's not good, because when we irrigate, one of the things that we do is we irrigate for water, right? The other thing that we irrigate for is to bring air into the soil. So when you put water on and it drains, and it has to be able to drain gravitationally, you're also pulling fresh air in. And what's in fresh air? Oxygen. So what that does is it gives the oxygen that we need to get microbes in the soil. So the importance of that, if you can go to the next slide, or that we start to build these aggregates. The way that we build them is by binding the clay particles, and the way that we bind them is through microbial activity. So that's where the biology of the soil is really important. So when we put mulch or compost on and we're adding that carbon to the soil, this is the healthy soils part, is that it does amazing things, because it isn't the compost or the mulch or the carbon that changes your soil. It's that it's the food for the microorganisms. That's where they're getting their carbon. So they need carbon and oxygen. So you need to be able to move the air through, they have to have water, and they have to have that carbon. So the binding action happens The binding action to bind those together is the primary one in the very beginning, is biological activity. So bacteria don't live that long, and when they die, we call it necromass. It actually is sticky and it binds the clay particles together. So that dark, when we say we have a dark, rich soil, that's a bunch of dead organisms, you know, bacteria and stuff that give it that really great, nice, dark, rich look. But we can't do it unless we have carbon, which is where, you know, the healthy soils, putting one of the strategies is to put mulch on, or it's to grow cover crops, because remember where a lot of that organic matter comes from is from root systems. And that's going to feed those microorganisms as you have root sloughing, or as you mow it and you let the roots die. Does that make sense? So we're just like setting the table for all these microorganisms to have a feast. And then as they feast, they die, they stick things together. And there's a lot of other mechanisms that go into this, but we're not going to get into them in the next 6 minutes. So, but that's kind of the beginning. And that's why it's so important to be thinking about your soil when you're putting these products on. And so again, micro aggregates or macro aggregates are formed when we put the micro aggregates together. And you'll start to see in a single irrigation season, going from this plate to this kind of size right here. And that's where we can get the air and stuff moving, but we have to be careful when we put it on. We don't want to compact soil after we've done it, because then you just squish everything down again and destroy them. So don't be running a bunch of heavy machinery over after you've done this. Okay, so improving soil structure, talk about compost as a pre-plant. I brought some samples here. This is what a compost looks like. It's fine, it's dark, again, because all of those bacteria took the green material and turned it into kind of a decomposing. So that would be what compost is. That's what we mix into the soil. So that would be a pre-plant when you're planting. And it's usually used, and again, it's usually used at the rate of like 1 inch tilled into the top 6 to 8 inches of soil. So you're not really using a whole lot of it. For those of you that have orchards or vineyards already, what we do is we use a mulch. And the difference between a mulch can be used as a noun or a verb, right? But what we want to do is we want to use a mulch that's been composted, because you're going to be inoculating your soil with beneficial organisms at that point. A mulch is much coarser textured. Over time, it will break down, and that's what we want. If it's not breaking down, then that means that we haven't gotten the microbial activity. So we want a mulch. And just to compare that with just wood chips, this is the difference between a composted mulch and wood chips. You'll see these years later in your, if you put these out in your orchard. The problem with it is that you haven't really done anything to improve your soil, because if you can still see it, it hasn't had the biological activity to actually improve your soil. So that's the difference between those. We want to make sure that when we put mulch on, that we're putting it on about 2 inches thick. And I like to say put it out about 2 inches, or sorry, about a foot beyond the drip line of your irrigation pattern. I think that that's really important. You don't have to spread it out all over, although you can. But 2 feet beyond the canopy. So one of the reasons, and this is where I think this is really beneficial, going back to the interactions between chemical, physical, and biological, is one of the reasons that I love mulch so much, is that we have a lot of issues with salinity, especially in avocados. How many of you grow avocados, by the way? Vineyards? Citrus? Cool. Okay, so you've seen salt buildup. And so one of the things that mulch does is that, like, if I were to use our salty water from, the municipal water source, and I just put it on and let it dry and put it on, let it dry, you see this precipitate on the sponge. I did this in my kitchen. It's the same thing in your soil. You build up salt levels at the edge of the irrigation pattern. And so when you built those up, when you have distortions during the summer, especially when it's hot and our evapotranspiration rates go up pretty high, you have issues with the plant actually taking up, the roots being exposed to this excess salinity, and it can cause damage. It's one of the reasons why we see more damage in August, September, is that we built up these levels during the season, and now the plants are put in a position of just sucking up more salts. One of the advantages of putting mulch down is that it kind of protects the soil. When we irrigate, we don't get that surface evaporation. And so everything that evaporates, it arithmetically, with your water, arithmetically increases the salinity that the plant is exposed to. So when we put mulch down, it's easier for the material, for the water to go through the soil and not be subject to that. Next one, soil food web, again, root sloughing. Read more about it. It really is kind of interesting how these organic levels are built up in the soil. And avocados are just one of the plants because they have such surface, they're surface root feeders. Most of the roots are going to be in the top foot of the soil. So they really are fascinating how they really can contribute to this whole biological food web. And we've already talked a lot about that. Humus, so like clay, humus is pretty amazing because it can hold on to nutrients. So as you get these stable organic structures in the soil, they also help with reducing the leaching of nutrients. So those are really important. So you're doing like all of these different things when you add compost and mulch. As it breaks down, it's really slow releasing nutrients. It's also forming humus, which is binding so that you're not chelating, so loosely held, so that you're not leaching nutrients into the groundwater, and it just gives soil its nice brown color. So that's it. You can use, I think I'm supposed to be done at what time? Oh, okay, great. Okay, so one of the things too that you could do if you have just like a soil that is not a has a high clay content before you plant, is that you can kind of push nature on a little bit by using the compost, the finer material, and putting it on as a blanket. So if you have a disturbed soil, you can put this on 1 inch thick. And again, what we do is we encourage people to get soil tests first, so we know if they need to put gypsum or if they have a low phosphorus soil. We can blend all of that in with the material, and then when that gets put out and it goes through a winter rain where it gets uniform water, you literally can see the results the next growing season. And so doing that before you even plant is a really great idea. So soil sampling. I won't bother with this because those of you that are interested, I brought a soil tube and I'd love to take you outside and show you how to sample soil during the break. And so thank you very much. That's your 20-minute soil talk.
It flew by.
Thank you, Mary, for that information, and we will put contact details with the slides after this. So right now, I'm inviting Dr. Bachie to talk about the importance of healthy soils in food production. Dr. Bachie.
Give me a minute here, I'm pulling it up for you.
Give us a minute as we are trying to set up Dr. Oli's presentation.
Well, in the meantime, good morning. It's good to be here with you and be able to speak on an important aspect of a crop production system. Mary has covered a lot about soils. I'm sure you can understand that now soil is more than, dirt that people want to refer to. It is a dynamic process, and it is good to know, even for the sake of applying, to get the incentive, funding program. It needs to know what are soils, what are really required to be changed, what do they want you to bring a change into the soil. So while I know most of you know what is healthy and unhealthy soil, I would just like, or I would call my presentation as a reiteration to just remind you or go over what you already know. So I'm going to talk about, the healthy soil, what healthy soil is, what it constitutes, and some additional information on what practices contribute to healthy soil. So I will go over the concept of healthy soil, soil organic matter, and carbon cycles, the healthy soil and management practices. I won't go into details of each one of those, some of them are already covered. Funding eligible soil health management practices, and then a description of some of the practices. It is hard to go over all the practices that are listed. It will take us more than a day if we have to touch each and every practice that CDFA recommends as contributing to healthy soils. So the concept of the healthy soil, it is gaining widespread. That is why they are putting up, this incentive funding program, because it promotes agricultural practices that are not only good for the farmer and rancher, but also good for the environment. So keeping soil healthy keeps not only productivity, but also environmental, friendly conditions. All right. Going forward.
Oh, here you go.
All right. Okay, thank you. So the term, soil health is interrelated and sometimes exchangeably used with soil quality. And it refers to simply how good the soil is in its role of supporting the growth of high yielding, high quality and healthy, crops. It went back. All right, so we said, healthy soils not only sustain, high crop, yield or crop yield quality, but also lead to carbon sequestration, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, drought, flood tolerance, and also improve air and water qualities. However, we know that, and we say soil is a dynamic process, which means it can be enriched and it can also be overused and get degraded. Okay? So when a soil is degraded, some people actually call it, it is worn out, it is tired, it needs to be replenished and all these things. So that is, what they want you to do, keep it up and make it, an ongoing or a steady state type of a process for its quality. All right. Hence the definition of healthy soil, and that the quality can be degraded. It speaks to the importance of managing soils so they are sustainable for future generations or future crop productivities. So in considering the the health or quality of a soil, we need to look at, the build-up of soil organic matter. Where does it come from? It's a natural process. Plants, animals would, live somehow, and then photosynthesize, die, and then go back to the soil and add organic matter to it. In the meantime, it gets changed into mineralized nutrient and taken up by the plant, and the process continues. So as you can see in here, carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere. That's why plants are actually sequestering the amount of carbon that stays into the atmosphere and assimilate into a photosynthesis, or just the materials that we feed on. All right. So organisms die, as you can see in here, any kind of livestock or other animals that depend on plants as a primary, food source, and then both the plants and so would die, and that gets converted, and the carbon in the meantime is buried deep into the soil. Okay, so we need to see from there now that the largest amount of carbon is actually in the soil, and they say soil organic matter contains 4 times as much carbon as in living plants. So most of it is because it includes planting growth, the root system, and the plants that grow on it as well. So hence the total organic carbon is the carbon stored in the soil organic matter, and which enters into the soil system. All right, so typical agriculture is said to have 1 to 6 organic matter. So that is why they say if you have got a soil that has got more than 6% organic matter, they don't think you would be increasing any further, and hence they do not really want anything in that, right? Okay, so as soil organic matter is depleted, it becomes a source of carbon for the atmosphere, and then we have to keep it on. We have to build additional organic matter into the soil system. So soil organic matter decreases from 3 to 2%. I read again. If soil organic matter decreases from 3 to 2%, the amount of carbon in the atmosphere could double. What does that mean? It just, it's volatile. It goes into the atmosphere as the organic matter declines. Okay, and that would actually is an emission of carbon into the atmosphere. So organic matter, soil organic matter, generally increases where biomass production is higher and where organic material additions occur. That's why they say cover cropping, mulching, composting, and so on, that adds into the soil system. So organic matter has got important features. Mary has already covered. Organic residues in the soil are reduced over time. Soil organic matter is very low in the desert, because there is high turnout into, the organic matter being released into, releasing carbon into the atmosphere. All right, so in summary then, we see that crop residues, manures, compost, and so on would actually add to soil organic matter, while respiration, meaning the breaking down of assimilate or photosynthesis by plant system that releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, okay? Instead of taking it in, is another process that actually causes the loss of carbon or organic matter, and then erosion. And so, of course, there are many, this does not really comprehend or include all processes that add and, increase organic matter. So understanding the role of organic matter is important in maintaining a healthy soil. All right, so when we look at organic matter, there are some natural processes that we look at. One is the nitrogen immobilization. What does that mean? When you add mulch, crop residues, and so on, they would actually be in the soil and take up or hold nutrient into the residues. That is why as soon as you add crop residues or anything of that sort to the soil, the amount of nutrient that is available would decrease. It is immobilized. However, over a period of time, the immobilized nutrients or components would be mineralized, meaning microorganisms can degrade onto the residues or other materials that are added into the soil and then becomes readily available nutrients. And one of is in here, the organic matter contains 5% nitrogen. So when they tell us to add, cover cropping, for example, as a living manure or as something that can be incorporated, it is adding that amount of nitrogen and holding it for the subsequent, crop. Okay, so there are agricultural management practices for healthy soil. That is what CDFA recommends as eligible agricultural management practices. And those are divided into the different management practices or the agricultural management types. One is for cropland management practices. What soil management practices can you use in a crop management practice? It is listed in here, a lot of them, including cover crop, conservation crop rotation, and name them. It's a lot to go through. So there are many. Okay, those are eligible practices. Out of those, mulching, compost, and so on, Mary has already talked about it. And then herbaceous cover or establishment on cropland. And again, there are other practices or similar practices that can be used in cropland to be used in herbaceous cover establishment. And then woody cover establishment, say alley cropping, hedge grow planting, multi-story cropping, riparian. Each one of those, if you look at to the right, the blue, area, those are practices that USDA and RCS has put. So if you look at the healthy soil, website, and then click those, you could actually get the details of each of the management practices. And they are easy to understand. Yes, sir.
I just had a question. Thinking about this, if you have an avocado.
Sorry, do you have a microphone near you so the Zoom participants can hear you?
If you have an avocado tree, wouldn't it be reasonable to think that
Eddie,
that tree
Eddie,
is
turn it
is a mulching machine constant? Yes.
I think you have to turn it on.
I think I understood what it is. If you have,
It doesn't work.
yes, okay. What he said is if you have got an avocado, cropping system, what would be the right time to use the mulching practice?
That's not my question.
Okay, all right.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't get to finish. My question is
I'm sorry.
that an avocado tree is a mulching machine. Essentially, it's dropping leaves all the time. And then in addition to that, when you go in and you stump an avocado to let it regrow, you're putting all that material on the ground and generally chopping it up with a machete or something like that. Shouldn't there be some funds available for those growers that are doing that and have perennial crops such as an avocado tree rather than have to pay for mulch to be hauled in and to use that, I can understand if you need that as a supplement. But with an avocado tree, with the carbon sequestration and all the other benefits that it's providing, it seems to me that if the grower could get some type of funding through your program, your Healthy Soils program, just the fact that he's growing an avocado tree, that seems that would be a more sustainable idea rather than having to pay to have this hauled in with the hauling cost, the fuel cost. And the other question, of course, is why are we cutting down other plants to haul in and put under an existing tree that if it's kept healthy and is able to grow in a particular environment can provide much of its own mulch.
Thanks so much for that comment, and it's something we've been thinking about too. Let's get into that discussion at the question and answer period, if you don't mind.
Okay, we will keep it and we will, get in touch and then maybe, or, talk about that during question and answer period. Okay, all right. So another, practice area is the grazing land. This is four, right? Okay. What can we use? We can use compost applications, prescribed grazing, range planting, silvopasture. And maybe that silvopasture is maybe a little difficult. The others are very clear. Silvopasture is simply the production of pasture within the forest ecosystem or tree crops and then using it for grazing. This is very common for small scale farmings, particularly in areas where they have, multi-production system. They have livestock, sheep, goat, and also tree crops. So what they do, they plant, some cover crops or pasture and so on. So it is used for multi-purposes. All right. Definitions, what do they mean? While I know that, by clicking, what I asked you to click if you are online, there are some that we may need. So what does alley cropping mean? It simply means trees or shrubs that are planted in sets of single or multiple rows with agronomic, horticultural crops or forages produced in the alleys between the sets of woody plants. Okay, so you have got that alley, and that alley is usually used for wheat growing. So if you grow into that area, you will take the niche of the weeds, meaning it can help you, control weeds while the alley cropping system can be utilized. They can be leguminous crop that could actually turn back, nitrogen into the tree, crops. All right, conservation cover is simply establishing and maintaining permanent vegetative cover. Conservation crop rotation is a sequence of crops growing on the same ground over a period of time. Okay. And then the nutrient management is, managing the amount or rate, source placement, method of application, and the timing of plant nutrients and soil amendments. In some cases, we have seen, particularly, the commercial growers, where they would actually apply a lot of nutrient, more than what the crop actually needs in anticipation to produce high grain yield or high forage yield. But know that not all what is applied is actually taken up. Plants have got a demand, and there has to be some kind of management not to waste, the resources, not only wasting. In Imperial Valley, for example, where we have got a lot of, nutrient applied to the soil system, most would actually leach or erode it and gets into, where do irrigation water get to in Imperial? the saltancy, right? So if you look at that is, what has called eutrophication, or, the presence of high amount of fertilizer that supports algae and so on. So a good, nutrient management is good in keeping the health of the soil. Residue and tillage management, this is applicable provided you have got the mechanization or the machinery to help, the cropping or cropping system into untilled or minimally tilled, soil. And strip cropping, growing plant rotations of erosion resistant and erosion susceptible crops, or fallow in a systematic arrangement of strips across a field. Okay, and contour buffer strips, and then forage and biomass planting. Okay, that is actually the good thing they look at when they say cover cropping. They usually recommend crops that produce high biomass. The higher the biomass, the higher is the organic matter that would be added into the soil. All right, strip cropping. Okay, so out of those then, it is not that easy to go over each and every practices, but I will just look at, some. Let's say, cover cropping. And what can we use? For cover cropping, we can use, grasses, legumes, forbs, or seasonal cover, and other, for other conservation purposes. Cover crops can be used as intercropping, particularly in tree crops, or even with other, some other annual crops, and they can be used as alternate cropping before and after the main crop. In most cases, because most of them are drought resistant type, they can be used as summer, cover cropping. So they will take up the nutrient during the summertime, and then when they are incorporated, few months or few weeks before planting the main crop, the nutrient would be mineralized and become available. So it becomes a source of nutrient for the crop or for the subsequent crop. Okay. All right, so what benefits do cover cropping or cover crops have? A lot of things. They add organic matter, enhance microbial numbers, because legumes have got associations with microbes, add nitrogen, suppress weeds. Okay, some of them do actually have a very good canopy that suppresses weed, or in some cases when they are incorporated, they can be used as mulch to suppress. Or even while they are alive, they take the place of the weeds, and therefore they have got many mechanisms by which they suppress weeds. Suppress nematodes. I know many of you are aware of the nematodes that cause problem, and many of them that we do not have control for. But there are some crops that have got nematicidal value, and if those crops are used as cover crop, they can actually suppress nematodes, reduce erosion, increase infiltration of water, decrease nutrient loss, and attract beneficial insects. Okay, so there are a lot that can be benefited from using cover crops. All right. Okay.
What cover crops have you found that suppress
Sorry, do you have a
nematodes?
microphone available for the Zoom participants?
Oh, I can repeat. What cover crops do suppress nematodes? One of the most that I have seen and personally working on is marigolds. While living, they during as a green material, they do exude some chemicals, and that is we have seen that we have seen some separation from that. I also got informed that some plants like Hispania would actually have some nematicidal value. But I think it really needs to search for what are those crops that, have broad nematode suppression quality.
Because the marigolds also produce a type of pyrethrin, don't they?
I guess so. Not all are, all around, good. Okay, so here is what they can be used. In this case, in a grape orchard, we can see, cover crops that grow in a dormant crop during, winter or anything. The winter cover crops can be grown. And in here with the tree crops, you can see, the area or the alley being used by cover crops. And then they use this. This is a cowpea, cropping system in young citrus, plant. Okay. All right, so here we go. The cover cropping as a rotation, marigold. Okay, and that is, something that I have, worked on in addition to adding biomass. They have got really good quality in suppressing, particularly the melodogyne or what are the melodogyne is called?
Sorry.
Root knot nematodes. Root knot nematodes. All right. Okay. And this is, look at the biomass. I actually used 2 cover cropping system, marigold and cowpea, and I saw, a huge biomass production and turnout from, the cover crop. So what we did is, just mow down this and incorporate into the soil system, and then growing broccoli after it. So broccoli did actually benefit. This doesn't show, but the farther tip is an area that did not have summer cover cropping. But with the data, we knew that the area that did not have summer cover cropping or a fallow land actually produce less amount or less yield of broccoli. So obviously, yes, summer cropping, cover cropping, incorporating would actually benefit a subsequent crop, in this case, broccoli. All right, so what do the cover crop do? If they are planted at alternate, they take up the nutrient that may have been leached, eroded, and so on, and keep in the biomass. And when they are actually incorporated, they release that amount into or for the subsequent crop. So there are criteria for cover cropping. Not all cover cropping are good for all cropping systems. Okay, the species selected must be compatible. In plant systems, you have known what is called allelopathy, the production of chemical compounds that would inhibit other crops. So we need to actually look at what crops are compatible with the cropping system that you want to integrate into. And then, of course, the herbicide that can be used with cover crop must be compatible with the other cropping system, with the main crop system as well. Ensure that plants are not listed as noxious weeds. Okay? Otherwise, it would be invading and become an invasive species. Cover crop residues should not be burned. In many cases, particularly the low desert, when they are growing, wheat, the residues are actually burned down. Okay, I am. The tillage practices, there are 2 types. Either a minimum tillage, so it is like scratching, not really beating the soil up and down. That is what they do in areas where commercial areas, they just, many times so that it actually facilitates the cropping system. But they say if residues are left partly onto the soil, it adds organic matter. Or the no tillage, those are also possible. So we see in here that they use this type of mechanization to plant into the heavy crop, residues. All right, the same thing, in here, a minimum tillage, And that is all I have. Thank you very much.
So Oli, I think as you are looking at the time, I will be allowing Joel to do his presentation and hold into your questions after Joel. Then you'll have questions from Mary, Oli, and Joel. Joel.
I'm gonna take my chances with this pointer. Otherwise, Esther, love your help. Great. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Joel Kramer. I work at the Resource Conservation District that is based in Lakeside. There's two others in the county. Luis Ramos is here from Mission RCD. So, and then again, there's a third up in Upper San Luis Rey, around Palma Valley in Warner Springs. So, so glad to be here with Esther today. Esther put in a lot of work to make this event possible. So really appreciate that. And also so thankful to the Farm Bureau for hosting us because it's an amazing space. What I'm going to talk about today is the use of healthy soils practices that have impacts on your benefits to your water resources on your farm, because there's so many co-benefits from all of these practices. And just a quick reminder to those of you on Zoom or in the audience, if you have questions, feel free to ask your questions or to record them. But we will be answering them during the Q&A session in about 10 minutes. So we'll get to that. Just a little overview of our organization, the Resource Conservation District Agricultural Support Program or Carbon Farming Program. We provide a variety of services from education at our organic farm in Imperial Beach, Wild Willow Farm, all the way up to regional planning efforts, which some of you are involved in, and hopefully all of you will be involved in over the next couple of years, where we're reaching out to producers to see what your greatest concerns are so we can help to build regional policies that really support agriculture as a whole. But today I'm going to be focusing on our technical assistance and implementation elements. And I want to bring out a couple examples of how these practices that Mary and Oldie have been talking about, how we're using them on actual farms and demonstration sites in San Diego. So this was already covered for the most part, but I like this simple illustration because it shows how if you were to take these many different practices and implement them on your farm, how you start to change the entire landscape. And you don't just get those benefits that they were talking about of water retention and soil health right on the fields, but you actually develop the landscape to be more resilient to climate change while also combating the effects of climate change. So you're drawing down carbon, but you're also making your farm more resilient to heat waves or drought or different incidents that you're going to have to deal with more. So one of those practices that was touched on is mulch application. Thanks for bringing that sample, Mary. And the reason why mulch application is so beneficial, in addition to building up the soil health so that of course you have those production and yield increases as a result. But in the case, for example, I see that a lot of you are orchard growers. In the case of a heat wave, it's difficult to put down enough water on your field to prevent that crop, especially in the fruiting period, from getting affected by a heat wave, especially if it goes on for several days. So you have to take alternate strategies. One of those might be overhead sprinklers, but think about the investment in that infrastructure that would be required. But using mulch, in addition to all the benefits that were mentioned, in that moment of crisis, will also prevent that fruit from going to waste by bringing down the soil temperature, and also by retaining the water that you've put on the field so that it isn't lost. And so in the moment of greatest need, but also throughout the year during rain events, you're going to be capturing more of that water because you'll improve the water holding capacity of the soil. So that should reduce your irrigation requirements as well. Now, one of the drawbacks on mulch application is that where it's most needed in these orchards is oftentimes on steep slopes with narrow alleys. And so it can be very difficult to mechanize this in a way that's done in other situations. And so that's why we're testing out methods at our demonstration site to see if there's other ways that can be more effective. Another tool that was mentioned was planting cover crops. Thanks, Oli, for digging into that. So I won't go into too much depth, but again, the benefits of the cover crops aren't just improving the health of the soil, because most people would ask, why would you spend your precious water planting something when there's already limited water resources for the crop itself? But by implementing cover crops over time, you should be able to offset that additional water use for irrigation, because the soil water holding capacity will break up that clay layer and deepen the layer that retains the water, so that with each storm that comes or each irrigation that you have, it actually has more water available. You won't see these results necessarily in the first year. You may see the development of the soil the way Mary was talking about, but over several successive years of keeping it in a dynamic system, as Oli said, then you should be able to deepen that layer that is actually actively holding the water. And so a little bit about our demonstration site. It's in Escondido, and it is funded with these funds that Esther is going to be talking about today. It is a demonstration grant for Healthy Soils program. This orchard was your classic avocado orchard in San Diego. It goes back more than 50 years, and in that time, the trees had grown to the height of higher than an apartment building of 60 feet high, which is very impressive for production. However, in the case of a drought, in the case of a heat wave, it becomes very vulnerable and difficult to manage, difficult to put down enough water to keep that orchard growing, and susceptible to wildfire should it come along. And that is what happened in this case. So the grower we're working with is a new owner of the orchard, and they saw the challenges the previous owner had faced and decided to stump and to increase the density of the field and also reduce the height, all with the goal of using less water on that field. And so this is their experimental design, where we're looking at application of compost, mulch, and cover cropping to try to take advantage of every drop of water that falls or is irrigated onto those fields. And so Esther helped to design this experimental design, where we're testing out 3 different objectives with the cover crops, because there's so many varieties you can use. So on our steepest slopes, the bottom there, plot 3, we're focusing on grasses to stabilize the area. On our most gradual slopes at the top, the plots 1, you see the treatments and control sites. We're looking more at legumes so that we can take advantage of that for different crops or alley crops as well. And then in the middle, we're focusing on pollination, because avocados have a shorter blooming period, and we want to keep those pollinators on site throughout the year. This project started about a year ago. We've been monitoring the soil organic matter, monitoring the infiltration rate, and we're looking forward to sharing results with you once we have several data points to share. So just a little bit more about different ways that we can help you. We have funding available to come to your farm and test your soil organic matter, if that's something that you're interested in. This is something that's required for and covered as part of the Healthy Soils grants. However, if you're interested in getting some baseline data and you don't have it yet, we're happy to come out and take a soil sample and send it to the lab for you. We are building our capacity to provide irrigation evaluations. Lance Anderson and Luis Ramos here from Mission RCD has been supplying that service throughout the county for more than a decade now, but we know that there's a great need for it, so we're building our capacity to do that as well, and look forward to providing that in the near future. And also, of course, as you apply to these grants, you can reach out to Esther. You can also reach out to Cody and myself for help on actually filling out these grant applications, because we know that they can be difficult to navigate. If outside of this grant application process, you're interested in adding more natives to your property to bring in pollinators by planting hedgerows or herbaceous cover, we've got good guidelines on that. We have a demonstration site that we use to develop native hedgerows to bring in pollinators. So happy to provide plant selection for that. And lastly, we also manage the Fire Safe Council of Greater San Diego County. And so you may be familiar with the free chipping service, but if you have cleared 100 feet of defensible space around your building, Tom, I know that you've spoken with Morgan Graves, our program manager for that. Everyone in the county is eligible for free chipping services around those buildings, so not in the orchard itself. And if you are on a fixed income, you can have that actual clearing, the defensible space clearing free of charge. So you may know somebody who might need that service. So ways to get involved. We have a monthly newsletter that Cody sends out. That's where you'll hear about upcoming events like this one. Some of you may be here today from signing up for that. Also, grant opportunities. There's several aside from the CDFA programs that may be valuable to you. And we're going to be rolling out our producer needs assessment based on the one that Cooperative Extension did back in 2018. We're rolling that out and over the next few weeks. It'll be online, or if you'd rather do it in person by talking to somebody, that's great. But it'll be an assessment of your greatest concerns and needs and how policies in San Diego can better support that. So we'd love you to take that producer needs assessment and get involved in listening sessions if you're really interested. So thanks so much for having me, and I think we got time for questions now.
Thank you, Joel. Yes, I think now the floor is open for questions, and if you are online and you want to ask your question, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. The people in the room will hear you. So going back to the people who have some questions, we will be distributing the mic so that you can ask your question.
Can we start with Eddie Grangetto? I don't think his question was answered just yet. I'll take a stab at it, and if anyone else wants to. Yeah, so the CDFA grants do not
repeat the question.
Yes.
For the online people.
Of course. Eddie was making the strong point that orchard growers and especially avocado growers are already fixing carbon just by having the orchard there. They're already producing mulch just by having avocados as their chosen crop. And so why aren't they being receiving credits or being awarded some way for those ecosystem services they're providing? And I think it came up specifically because the Healthy Soils program requires you to bring mulch from off-site. They do not want you to use on-site mulch for this grant. We don't have control of that. We have complaining power, and each year we submit suggestions for them to change that. And it makes sense to me what you're saying, because essentially the people who are putting the most effort into improving the land aren't getting the credit for it. So I don't know if anyone else has something else to say with that regard.
Yeah. So I think there's also an opportunity, Eddie, with the climate action plans that every jurisdiction has to do independently of each other to lobby local government to say, you know, we're in your jurisdiction and we're actually, and by farming, there's tables that EPA has put out that show for different groups of plants how much carbon you're sequestering. Because I think a lot of us feel that with the high cost of water, that this would be something, since they have to pay for these carbon credits, that you know, the city of Escondido, you know, getting involved at that level, I think would be something that can be looked at long term.
Eddie made a good point. I've got a tractor.
Got that mic.
I have a tractor. Did I get it?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a tractor towed mulcher.
Put it up by your mouth.
I've got a tractor towed mulcher that will take and break a 4-inch branch or leaves down to small size. So I go and trim 3 trees one day and leave the mulch there because it's not easy to collect 50 tons of mulch and then save it to move it somewhere else. So that's like he said, what credit do I get for doing that? Because I'm effectively trimming the tree and putting everything back where it came from, but as mulch. And then you mentioned, okay, don't mulch any closer than must be 2 feet away from the drip line. And then you just said mulch saves the water.
Oh,
But there's no mulch underneath the tree other than the weeds.
No.
I'm organic.
oh, I think,
That's one of the biggest
I think you
problems.
misunderstood me. So if this is your tree,
Right, I
and this is the
understand
drip
keeping
line,
it away from
you wanted mulch from
about a
2
foot away from the tree.
Yeah, because the mulch will stay right next to the trunk. and
Right,
you
I
get ground rot.
understand
But no, I'm saying to go from that point to 2 feet beyond the drip line.
beyond the drip line,
Beyond
okay.
the drip line, yeah, so that you could.
Yeah,
take
because
into
then you're
account
getting down in the
irrigation pattern.
alleyways between
Yeah.
the trees.
Yeah, that's where you'll find the majority of the roots.
Okay, that's. Because I have organic grows as many people do, and one of the biggest problems from what I've read about organic is weeds.
Sorry, what is your name, sir?
Jerry,
Jerry. Great. Thank you. Rick, just one moment. I just wanted to address your question, man. Can you remind me your name? You were asking about the nematodes, Christine.
Right.
Yeah, in addition to the marigolds, Oli mentioned, I think brassicas from the mustard family also will help with nematodes, and some cover crops you might use for that would be radish or actually mustard. So
I've been using mustard and also 2 types of clover. Yeah, that look very promising.
that's good.
Yeah, so one of the things that we worked with root knot nematode and this is on table grapes out in the desert, was taking shrimp shells because they're high in chitin. And when we compost the shrimp shells, like we have a method of doing it, but mixing the shrimp shells in at about 1%, we found that we got really nice control of root knot nematode on table grapes and using that as a mulch. So, you know, getting a bunch of shrimp shells can sometimes be tough, but well, it's true, it can be. But we did see those results, and it's actually being used quite a bit out in the Coachella Valley now.
Yeah, I think in addition, what we look at, not only, the live nematicidal value, but also the crop rotation that we bring in. Nematodes can be specific to the crop they are attacking. So if you put in cover crops that would not be, susceptible to nematodes, you would be breaking the cycle and then reduce the population density of the nematodes in that area. One of the problems we have with sugar beet that grows in the low desert is, the cyst nematodes, and they are really, year after year, growers are planting, sugar beet. So if they have this system of breaking the cycle by putting cover crops into the beet, they can also suppress nematodes.
Yeah, there was a question, just since we're on this topic, from the chat in Zoom. Someone is asking, how do we use cover crops in a San Diego vineyard with only drip irrigation to the vines and too little rain to support, and usually no drip irrigations in the alleys?
Anybody with the answer to the question? I think that has been the problem in San Diego. And I think what we advise people to do is wait for the rainy season and do cover crop during the rainy season. It's not like you are adding zero, but at least you are adding something. So that when it rains, it sustains the cover crop, and probably you will do it one time if maybe in other places they water it, if you don't want to water it.
I have an answer to that also, if you like.
Yeah, please for the people online.
What some growers will do is when they install the vineyard, they'll also put in an alternate system of pattern type sprinklers that can cover the entire surface area. And they'll use that usually in the off season to go ahead and take care of their cover crop. And even though it costs money, if they do want to use a cover crop, they'll have that because there's many sprinklers now that can run at very low pressure but cover quite a distance.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. Thank you for the answer.
Yeah, that is probably essential just because it's hard to predict if we'll have a steady rain year, even in a wet period. One way of getting around that Palma Tribal Farms has used CDFA grants to do is to cover crop with native plants. And so they've used native grasses and forbs so that they're not as dependent on that supplemental irrigation. You might not get as much biomass, but you'll probably get more predictable results.
We also had somebody ask, since we're on cover crops, I know we've been chatting about nematode suppression, but is there a general cover crop you suggest for avocado orchards?
We like to think of cover cropping as an art as much as it is a science. I wouldn't say that there's one species that would be good for every orchard. It depends on your needs. So as I said, addressing erosion, you would use different cover crops than you would to address nitrogen supplements versus pollination. So I'm happy to provide plenty of documents and YouTube videos from previous presentations on that if you want to navigate that. But yeah, it depends on your farm.
I think there can't be, really a quick fix or quick answer to this because the selection of cover crop would actually depend on the compatibility with other cropping systems. Say, if I say, hey, marigold is good, it may be good for some crop, but not for all crops. It may have, what you mentioned already, that there are some chemicals, and we do not know how that chemical would actually react to the, main cropping system. So while most leguminous crop, could be, the vetch, the cowpeas, the Hispanias, and so on, are good cover crops with not that much of an effect or negative effect. It requires a research to find out which cover crops are compatible with which crops.
Thank you. I will, Rick, ask your question, please.
So my background, I've got the grove that was started in 1958. I've had it for 25 years. I've been certified organic, and I've given it up because of the cost of weed control, particularly after the Delta smelt decision, 30% water reduction after remove trees, which over can't. I really want to echo on what Eddie said. Just recent experience last week with fire mitigation with Deer Springs. The program's disconnected. I can't get. I don't have a home there. The pictures show farming applications, but in speaking to the gal, they won't do that. They won't do things that are dead more than 6 months. They won't do palm fronds. So there's funding going to things that aren't helping avocado growers. In particular, we're forced, or after we distill all the resources and look at our costs. So we're staring at $2,000 an acre foot water. TDS is over 600 coming out of Skinner, which is 100% Colorado river water. Avocado trees that are being stumped for cultural practice end up being firewood. I've actually just renewed my burn permit, very limited, which is working totally counter to what we're trying to do for air quality and all this. So but that's the world we live in, and there's not enough resources available. There's a fair amount of avocados in North County. 60% of the revenue for my district is ag. big chunk of that is avocado. We're all going away. Standing dead groves touching two corners of my grove. Talk about fire risk. And I've had the Deer Springs fire head guy out and said, can't do anything about it, sorry. There's problems. I'd like to advocate for what Mary touched on. Whatever we need to do locally to whine, complain, beg, to get the dollars reallocated into a practice that makes sense for us. Cover crops for mature orchards, it's almost a non-starter. The grasses are competing with the roots, and a mature orchard can be the canopy, which is ideal for weed control. Cover crops are so well, I'd like to see a forum where we could define this. I've been talking about this for 10 years. It doesn't seem to have been a little bit of frustration, but I appreciate this morning. I got a feeling 50-year-old avocado grow, it's got more than 6% organic material. I think that qualified.
Yeah, thank you for the comment, and I think that's what we have, we've been trying to do. It is very important that we meet with the growers, and then we get our comments and complaints and write them up and send it to CDFA. We have done that for the last 3 years, and some of the comments that we write to them, we've seen them change a little bit. So I think you are right. We can maybe group ourselves and write those comments with all of our names for San Diego, then probably it could make a difference, because just one person echoing a problem, it doesn't change anything. I probably think it's just taking a teaspoon of water and throwing it into the salt water to dilute it. But I feel like 20 people voices is better than just one voice. They accept comments every year, and we have done that with the state water efficiency program. And we are still also doing that with HSP right now. So, and we have talked about research as well, because they are talking about cover crops. Are these cover crops compatible with other crops? The studies done, so they have a demonstration project that people are doing research on. But I think probably after 10 years, we could have something to say. But as they started in 2017, that is what is happening. Going back to the avocados shedding leaves, and I think I want to say my stay in San Diego, I've seen you guys being a step ahead all the time. We are talking about conservation. They give money for people to conserve. You have already done it. So it's like you are a step ahead. They learn from you and then ask people to do what you have done, which is very difficult. But I think you'll keep talking and see what changes can be done. We are going to be in a break. I think our break was supposed to be, yes, I will attend to that. So our break was supposed to be from 11:20, rather 11:20 to 11:30. So probably we could keep answering questions while people partake in the break. And we are not going to have the demonstration for the soil sampling because we don't have enough break. But we will organize a workshop. We will organize a workshop where we'll go into the field and do field training and soil sampling so that everybody could partake of that. We will keep you posted. We are on a break for what's the time right now?
So yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. You've got a few options. You can spend it on your own. You can come up and talk to us, or Mary will be doing a 5-minute soil test outside. So take your pick.
Afternoon, is it morning or afternoon? Good morning to everybody. So we will be getting into why we are here. The first three speakers were really talking about the importance of these practices. Now I'll be talking to you about what CDFA is offering and what you can do in the farm, and how to apply as well. So we will be looking at the program overview. We'll look into the funding and duration, the solicitation, eligibility, the practices, though only have mentioned some of them and a lot of them, the duration of the project, the technical assistance, and most importantly, how to apply. So this program is a competitive grant. It started in 2017 with the effort of reducing greenhouse gases, sequestering carbon, and improving the soil health. So they have seen that at least when you work on your soil, when you improve your soil, then you probably would not need a lot of fertilizers. You will not need some management that you otherwise do that degrade the soil. So you apply to the program before, like you would apply, and then they will look at everybody that has applied, and then they will offer you the money. So this time it is on first come, first serve, meaning you apply, they look at your application, and they decide to give you the money. So they have two programs that are running. The incentive program is where an individual grower can apply for these funds, and then they will get funded. They will apply them in their farm. The idea is when you do maybe the mulch or compost, you see how beneficial it is, because the program ran for 3 years. Maybe after 3 years, you will continue with the program. So you don't, so now you'll be continue to like build your soil health. The demonstration project is because these programs or these practices are very tricky. You cannot say, hey, because it works for farmer A, it will work on farm B. So what we are doing with the demonstration project is that the farmers get in, like work with the researchers, maybe the universities, to do research on these projects. So on these practices, like you join hands with the universities, and then you measure some things. That is what Joel was talking about. We work with the one grower, and you are looking at the infiltration. We are looking at how the carbon is going to change in that soil. So it's just like you do work, and then we come in and we get the results so we can share with other farmers. But today we'll be focused on the incentive program, which is for the individual growers. So this funding this year, they're giving you the total fund is 75 million, 50 million from the California General Fund, and 25 million from CCI. And individual grower is entitled to getting 100,000 per application. And the implementation of this program is gonna start in 2022, and it's gonna end in 2025. So that's what I was saying. It is 3 year, is a 3 year duration program. But you just need to get the soil sample, send it to the lab. They are looking at the organic carbon of the soil, and then you can make determination if that practice that you chose works for you or it doesn't. If it works for you, good, because you will keep doing it after the program. So this grant opened in November 1, 2021. And like I said, it's a rolling basis, first come, first serve. Is going to close on the 25th of February of 2022. But what I have seen with the last two, that they have a closing date, and because it's first come, first serve, they monitor, like they keep giving people the grant. So once the money is exhausted, then they close it. What I'm saying is, it is possible that they say it's closing on the 25th of February, but it might close November, maybe end of November or end of December, based on if that 75 million has been exhausted. The review, because it's on first come, first serve, when you submit your application, they will look at your application and give you feedback. So you might know, like, let's say you submitted 1st of November, you might know maybe end of this November if you got the grant or not. So anytime you submit, they look at your submission, your application, and they can decide to give you the money or send the application back to you and say, this is the problem that we found in your application. But that is good because they are allowing you to resend your application. So after they give you feedback, you are able to work on the application again and submit it back. So if the money is not exhausted and is on 10, you can get that funding again after correcting your application. So this is how it goes. We, me, Joel, Harley, Cody, and Oli, we will help you with the application, or you can do it on your own. Once you submit it, the CDFA people are going to look at your application, and if you are not missing anything, they will send you to the technical review. And then from the technical review, they'll be looking at maybe the practice that you are saying you are doing. Are you going to do it right? And they can reject your application, or they can give you the money. So if you are successful, then you have to wait for the pre-project consultation with them before you can before you can implement. So this is one more thing that I'm repeating. I've heard people say, okay, I want to apply for this practice, but can I start it now? So no, you cannot start it now until they give you a letter to say, or let me say, until you have signed the agreement to say you have been awarded the grant. So they give you the money based on how much money have you used, and then they reimburse you. So if you do it now, before you get any letter, they're going to say your date of your receipt does not correspond to the time when you were given the grant, so you won't be given the money. So if you are thinking of any practice that you want to do, just wait until you sign the agreement, and that's when you can do that practice. So the technical, actually the administrative reviewers, like I said, the CDFA, the technical review, they pick a lot of people from university experts, like people who know about the soil health, people who have worked on the soils, people who have probably done these practices as well. They know the science behind them. So those are the people who will be reviewing your applications. Unlike there is another program that we do, is called the State Water Efficiency Enhancements Program. So this one too, they have priority populations or priority persons. Priority persons are people of color, Black people, Latino, they have those kind of people, me. And then they have priority populations as well, is when you have a farm in a low income area, so you qualify as a priority population. But the nice thing with this Healthy Soils program is once you put in your APN, it will tell them if you belong to the priority population. And again, there are some questions that they ask, and they will know if you are a priority person or not. So there's no need to sit around and be wondering, am I going to qualify or not? Because the application will let you know. They expect that when you submit your application, they will give you feedback of whether you got funded or you didn't get funded in 6 weeks. And we've seen sometimes taking 2 weeks or 1 week, depending on how many applications were before yours, or sometimes going to 8 weeks, depending on the application. So roughly 6 weeks, but it can take more or less. So this is what makes your application to get disqualified by the CDFA or by the administrative review. If your application is incomplete, they will outright disqualify your application. If they have like things that they say you have to attach, if you have missing attachments, blank, unreadable, corrupt, they will outright disqualify your applications. And if you exceed the money, like they're saying they are gonna give you 100,000, if you ask for 100,001 cent, that is a direct disqualification. If anything, if you cannot meet 100,000, let it be below 100,000. If you also write in things that are not per the grant, maybe you are like, I'm going to buy maybe a tractor, whatever you, that is not allowed, that is a point of disqualification as well. And or you are implementing a practice that is not covered, that is also something that they will disqualify you of. So they gauge your application, they have like 60 points. And so 10 points are for the logistics, 10 points are for the project design, the work plan is 10 points, and the project budget is 20 points. And then they have the conservation plan, which is 10 points, but is optional. So if you apply and then you score 40% for this year, you are going to be qualified to be given the money, because they're not waiting for everybody to apply and then they are comparing your application with other people's application. So as long as you meet the 40 points, you will qualify for this. So I'm saying to people, it is good to have a conservation plan, but sometimes it takes longer to make that conservation plan. But the outside, I mean, if you take out the conservation plan, you will have 50 points. Maybe submit the application and work on the conservation plan while you are at it. That way, you are not going to be like submitting very late, because when you submit late, you might not get funded. But I'm simply saying do them together. But if you found someone who can do it, that is very good. You can submit all of them together. The eligibility, the farms should be in California. The farm should reduce greenhouse gases, and they should sequester soil carbon. If you are leasing land, like you are growing in a land but it's not yours, you should have a letter of a lease letter saying you will be farming that land for more than 3 years, because this grant runs for 3 years, so they want something to show that after 1 year, you wouldn't be like, I'm not farming anymore because the landlord kicked me out. So you have to ask for your lease, your landlord to write that letter, and that letter we are going to attach to the application. So one application per tax ID, and like I said one more time, it should be in California. You cannot ask for more than 100,000, you should not do any practice that has been done in the land before for 3 years. Like if you apply for mulch, you shouldn't be doing mulch within the 3 years, because that's really trying to get people to see how these practices are important. So when you do, when you continue with the mulch, you already know the importance. So that's not, that's something that you get disqualified if you do. And sorry, that's exactly what we are talking about. So the exclusions, the grants cannot be used to fund fields where there has been a demonstration project or incentive project before. So you cannot apply for, maybe you applied in 2017 and then you are applying today to like continue with the practice. I had someone ask me that question once and said, the mulch was really good for my farm. Now is 3 years. Can I apply for another 3 years? So the answer is no, you can't. After 3 years, you have to be doing it on your own. So the grants cannot be used to implement practices other than those listed in the request for grant application. So when you go online, they have like a 60 document that is telling you exactly what I'm telling you, the exclusion, everything that I'm telling you right now, I got from the grant application. So they have listed the practices that they feel are supposed to be done. And so you cannot do anything that is outside of that list. I think for the demonstration projects, you could do that, but for the incentive project, you have to do those that they have listed. The compost cannot be more than 20%. So if you are applying for compost, it should not be 20% in your land. But the tool that you are going to see after this is that when you put in your location or farm location, they already categorize the land to say this land is less than 5%, this one is more than 20%. So when you select a land that is more than 20%, the tool will refuse to work for you. But I haven't seen any soil in San Diego which is more than 20%. And so I feel like we can all apply for this. Let me see what I didn't. I think I covered all on the exclusions and the regional grow practices. This is what they are, and all you have talked to you about them. Even if you are you are growing, it's a cropland, you are eligible for this many practices that I'm showing you here. And Ali said this, that if you go into the website and then you click on this link, it will take you to the practice itself. So I just did that, and then this is what is pulling for me when you are looking at cover crop, like the purpose of cover crop. What are the purposes? All this you will see when you get that link that I just have. I have it in my presentation right now.
Can the grant include purchase of machinery such as a rotor tiller?
The question is, can the grant include the purchase of machinery? And the answer is right away no, but I will explain later on. So for this is for the cropland, and then for the orchard, this is what we have: compost, conservation, cover. I think about 8 of them, and this is what you can apply for if you are doing an orchard. This is what you can apply for when you are doing grazing land as well. So you still can do compost in your graze land. You can do the silver pasture, you can do the riparian forest buffer in your land. This is, so they call them a non-overlapping practices, very important to note, because they have grouped these practices into different, I think about 8 groups. So what it is telling you here is that when, for instance, you apply for cover crop, which is in group 1, you cannot ask money to do cover crop and conservation rotation. So you can ask to do cover crop in group 1 or reduce tillage in group 2, but you cannot apply for more than one practice from the same group. So the last group here, which is group 8, it is saying any practice listed in group 6 and mulching. So you cannot do maybe conservation cover, filter strips, grass waterway with mulching. So they are not going to fund you for that. Or if you do any group 6, which is still conservation cover, with group 8, with a reduced till or no till. So these are the things that you look at when you are looking to apply for this fund, so that you don't do this overlapping practices. And I think I've seen that the tool, they have even made it in a manner that when you try to apply for the 2 practices which are overlapping, is not going to allow you to put in the second practice. It is helpful because that way you know that something must be wrong, and then you look at these groupings and you're like, okay, I was doing group 1 and group 1, and that is not allowed. But these are the overlapping practices, and we will share the slide with you. And then we have distributed this Appendix A with you, and it's from that request for grant applications that I was talking to you about. but it is showing all those practices that are eligible, and it is showing, for instance, whether it falls under the cropland and what is the name of that practice, and how do you implement it. So here I just picked the example from the cropland, and I picked maybe the early cropping. So the early cropping, they're telling you how much they're going to pay. So they're going to pay 2,100 per acre, and it should be a tree planting single row. And they're telling you the requirements, they require the document that you have to produce for you to get paid. So I just picked a lot of them, but here compost from the orchard and vineyard, it goes for the cropland and it also goes for the grazing land. So compost is in two ways. You can have a compost which is carbon to nitrogen less than 11 and carbon to nitrogen which is more than 11. So and it should be on farm. So it can be on farm produced and you can buy it from elsewhere. They're going to give you $50 per ton for that. But if it is compost more than 11, you have to apply 2 to 4 tons per acre. If it is a compost less than 11, a compost of a ratio of carbon to nitrogen, which is less than 11, you can apply that compost. You have to buy like 6 to 8 tons. That's how you apply it. If you apply 2 tons, then you didn't meet the requirement of the grant. They might not pay you, they will not pay you. So you have to do that which they are asking. So if you have 7 acres of land and you want to apply compost and it's a compost of CN ratio more than 11, then it means you are going to, let's say, take 4 tons. So 4 tons times $50 times 7 acres, that's how much they're going to give you for that practice. The riparian forest buffers, a lot of money that comes out there as well if you are in a grazing land. So that was just the examples that I wanted to show you. But this is how that paper look like, rather that document look like very, very long, but towards the end of this document, that's where you get this Appendix A. And I think for the in-person people, we have shared, we have printed it for you. For online people, yeah, in the grant, in the RGA is at the end of that document. Sorry. So the notable update for the eligible practices, like they had this last year and they keep changing it based on what the comments that they are getting from people and also based on what they are observing in the ground, right? So this last year, the last 2 years, it was 100%. You were paying it and then getting the money back. So now this year they're going to at least give you 25% upfront, and then you'll be paying extra money. I mean, other monies as you go on. Last 2 years, they were if you have like financial issues, then you can write to them and ask them to give you the 25 advance. So this time they will give you that 25 advance. Mulching, all materials must be produced offsite. So last year they were allowing people to chip their own trees and mulch, but they say they have seen some irregularities. So they have stopped that. Now you have to buy the mulch offsite and show receipt for you to claim for that. They're discussing here what the natural mulch should look like and what the wood chips are, because some people will just get the grasses and say that's the wood chip. So they are trying to stop people from doing that. Conservation cover should at least include milkweed, 4% of milkweed. And then if you are saying you are doing a conservation cover crop, you should do 70% of the whole field or 60% of the whole field if it's a vineyard. Duration actually is really 3 years. So when, depending on you start, if you start winter and spring of 2022, you should do this before the December 31 of 2022. If you start July of 2024, you should do this before December 31 of 2024. So there is some time that you can, that they allow you to do it, but the deadline for you to do that practice should be the 31st of each year. When you do apply, this is some things that are looking for you to discuss. They want you to look at the baseline data, like you have to describe your cropping history in the past 3 years. So for this solicitation from 2021 to rather 2019 to 2021, you have to be looking at the management history in the past 3 years and the proposed plans from 2022 to 2025. So anything that we have done in the past 3 years, so if you did mulch in the past 3 years, then you are going to get disqualified because they cannot apply for the same practice within that 3 years. And then when you apply, this is some things that are going to be required for you to share with them. That will be a replan report. I'll show you what the replan is, the incentive work plan template, the comment planner report, that estimate greenhouse gases and estimate the project budget as well. So the comment planner, it is going to give you how much you are going to use, and then it is also going to show you how much greenhouse gases you have reduced. So the requirements, the project requirements, the selected project you will have to do the pre-project consultation with CDFA. So that's what I'm saying. Once you have, I have a farmer who did, I helped him apply for the grant last year, and I didn't really communicate this with him. And he went ahead and bought all the things and then put it in the farm. And then he was like, where is the money? And I'm like, did you sign any agreement? So that's why I'm continuing to talk about this. Once you see yourself having not signed the pre-project, know that they have not given it to you. Wait for it, sign for it, and that's when you can do this. So the requirements, you will need to consult with CDFA. You will need to implement these practices in the same field for 3 years. So some people apply and then they put mulch in one field and they're like, well, it didn't get broken down, and they go and put it the next year in another field. That is not required. If they ask you to put mulch in one field, it's going to be in one field for the 3 years. So some of the practices you can do them for 1 year, and some of the practices you can do them for 3 years. So you have to follow that which they're asking you to do. And you have to also, they will come out to your farm for 3 years. They will come to your farm and look at whether you have you have implemented it the way it was supposed to be implemented. But sometimes they ask for georeference georeference pictures, because with the georeference picture, it will show them the X and Y coordinates of that field. So that is what they are using to verify it sometimes. But they can come to you or they can ask the pictures, but those pictures should show the location. So this is how the CDFA website look like. What I just want to talk about here is this application is fully 100% online. You cannot apply outside and say, well, I want to send it, what is the address? They're not taking that. It has to be fully online. So you do it and then you submit it online. And what I encourage anybody that I help is we have here, let me see if I can do this. We have here, which is email subscriptions. And when you do that, anything that they do, For instance, I had today that the website was offline today because of the email notifications. When you do those notifications, they'll be telling you what is going on, and at least you can know what to do. But once you type CDFA or you from any search engine, you type CDFA Healthy Soils Program, and you look at the www.cdfa.ca, it will bring this page to you. And once you are in that page, you will have something like what you are seeing in the screen. I know it's not very eligible, but you want to go and click on the Healthy HSP Incentive Program, because that is what we are applying for right now. And I'm going to just open it, show it to you. This is how it looks like. And once you click on the Healthy Soils Incentive Program, it will bring this other page here. It brings this other page, at least the applications are open. So you have here is saying the program status and showing that the applications are open. And those attachments that I've been talking to you about, the request for grant proposal, I'm looking at the box that is shaded blue here. They have like the request for grant application, preview of application questions, frequently asked questions, supporting template. We have the work plan template and the replan tool and the CDFA comment planner. So those are the things that are just linked. When you click on it, they will open what that is for you, and then you will work on that. Looks like it's gonna take some time to load, but I will pass. So yes, you can do apply here, and then you can do also get help and how to apply from the website. I want to call attention to this. I picked from the website. I think that was, I don't know if it was yesterday when I was updating my presentation, but it is showing you, so they will track how many applications have been submitted. So as of the 11th of November, 164 applications were submitted, and the people asked for 11, is it this 11 million? Now what is remaining is 67 million. At least every day as you are working on the application and you want to submit, keep looking at that as well, because it will give you an idea if the money is getting depleted and you have to work very fast on your application or what you need to do. And then they have a graph here, at least 11,000 might seem like a lot of money, but it's a shock for me that this opened on the 1st of November and it is the 16th and 11 million is already requested. So it means we have to work very fast to put in the application, and we even expect a boom sometimes, maybe in 2 weeks, because some people get to learn about this. We are helping a lot of us, and then maybe there is a time when some submissions are going to be very many. So it's best you work on the application, you submit it, and then you wait to get the funding. And I have seen this as well. They say how to apply. I think you get it on Getting Help, and it says how to apply. It's a YouTube, and this person is going through all the application, like what you really need to know in the application, explaining a lot of things. So do that as well. If you still don't want to be talking to us yet, look at how to apply and then work on that. And then I have here, and I've given Cody this, it's an online application. It's a weekly Zoom help sessions, which is run by myself, Cody, and Joel. So we will be on the Zoom every Tuesday, and Cody is distributing that. You can just take a picture of the QR so you can register. We will be on Zoom every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, and to help people apply as well, if that's what you want. The contents of the application, this is what the contents are. Like you will have the project overview, the project logistic, the design. This is exactly when you look at it, then you will know, okay, this is what is needed before you can even submit. So here is just to show you what this is all about. So the WISE Hive is really how to get to that application that when I showed you, it was saying apply here. If you click onto this, it will take you, give me a second. It will take you to the page looking like this. So the page looking like this is asking you to sign in. So if you did apply maybe in 2017 and 2018 and were not funded, they will still retain your information, your sign-in information. So you can sign in to access the application. If not, you have to sign up. You will sign up, and when you sign up, they're just asking you to set up the application portal for you. So you can do that, and I'm going to sign in here. I'm going to sign in on my application, and this is what you are going to get when you sign in, or you sign in, or you sign up. So they will ask you if you want to create an application. If you don't have an application, or create, or you can say apply now if you already created. The nice thing is when you do this application, they keep saving. No, you need to keep saving it because you can come back to it anytime. So this is how the application is gonna look like. And the number here, 325-76112, that is my application number, which I'll be using in any tool that I use because they need to track my application with the attachment. So you will get something like this. And so you'll have 4 parts to this application. Part 1 is project information, part 2, project design, part 3, greenhouse estimates, and part 4, the application information. Project information, it really is asking you, give me a second, but the project overview, what the descriptions that I was talking to you about. What is your farm looking like? What is happening in your farm now? And then, or what is the what you want to do in your farm? And then we have the replan tool, the tool that I was talking about before. So the tool is really a tool that is showing them where your land is and showing them the acreage of your land. And because sometimes people have lots of land and they don't want to do one practice in their land, this tool allows you to pick the area that you want to do a practice on. So let's say you want to apply for 4 practices, you can partition your land in a manner that, okay, here I'm going to do compost, here I'm going to do maybe mulch. You can do that from that tool. And that tool, once you have signed up for this application, it is in the application. Like you can just log into this and then do everything from this page. So there is here, it says CDFA HSP replan, and then they have highlighted it in blue. You can go into that, that app, and that app looks something like this. You can find with the address of your land, if you know the address, or you can add your APN. So with your APN, you will choose where the county is. I don't know if anybody knows the APN here, but if they do, I can demonstrate. But I do this just to show you. I'm just going to pick this address because that's what I know. Let's see. Okay, it's refusing my address. Is refusing my address. Yeah, anything, something else. I just want to show you how after you add your address or your APN, how this app is going to look like. Give us a second.
Try the office address.
Yes, so yes, it like this one. So it will zoom into that map and then it will show you, it will show you your APN. But I like to say, because sometimes you cannot see this map very properly, there's something at the on your right and below. When you click on it, it will convert this map to an image. And then you can zoom into this map. Probably this is not gonna do it very well, but when you are in a desktop, you can zoom it up and then start partitioning your land to say, well, okay, I'm going to do maybe mulch here, I'm going to do cover crop here, or even I'm going to apply mulch and compost at the same time. So you do start begin, and then it will make you choose. Are you on a cropland orchard? Let's say you pick an orchard, and what you want to do is down here. So all those practices that I was talking to you about, they are in here. If they are not in here, then it means you cannot do them. You pick the practice that you want to do, and then that app is going to draw, you are going to draw a shape to show that this is where I want to apply this practice. And when you do, it is going to tell you the acreage of that land. It is going to tell you if your land is more than 20% of organic matter. If it's more than 20%, it's going to refuse to work from here. So you pick the practice, you draw the picture, I mean the box where you want to apply this, and it will also give you the acreage. So once you have that acreage, that is what you are going to use. So that which I was showing you is the replan, is where you plan. Like, okay, I have a 10-acre land, 5 acre I'm going to do mulch, 5 acre I'm going to do compost. So that is the plan. After you do that, you are going to print that and attach it to them. It will be showing information that they need to know about your land. And then you are going to go to the comment planner. The comment planner is just going to show you the practice that you picked. How much are they going to pay for that acreage that you found in the replan? And they're also going to tell you how much carbon dioxide or methane you are reducing. Once you have done that, you go back to your application and fill it in. I'm just going to pick here San Diego. Let's see if it's gonna work. So San Diego. Let's say we are in San Diego and you have a project name the way it is appearing in your application. And then let's say you are going to do your orchard. And then once you keep clicking on this, it will bring the information as I show it here. These are also the practices, the same practices that we are seeing in the replan. You cannot do anything outside this. Let's say we're going to do mulch. It's going to give information, bring information about the mulch. So add mulch to organic vineyards, we are going to do that. And then it is going to ask you, are you doing the natural materials or are you doing the wood chips? Let's say we are going to do the wood chips, and then it's asking you how much acres are you going to do this? And this you will have gotten from that drawing that you made, right? Like partitioning your land, like field 1, this is what, and then you are going to put it here. Let's say it's 7 acres. Of land that you are going to do this natural, did I pick natural materials? 7 acres. No, I picked the wood chips. Now, once you do that, it will be showing you that you are going to, with that practice, you are going to reduce, it's gonna be, you are going to reduce 4%, 4 of carbon dioxide, -2 of nitrous oxide, total carbon equivalent of 2, and it is going to tell you how much CDFA is going to give you. So this practice, which is a mulch, you are expected to mulch every year for 3 years, and you are expected to mulch, I think is 2 inches of mulch. So the 52,000 that they are showing you here is doing the mulch for the first year, doing it for the second year, and doing it for the third year. So as you can see, just a small land, you are going to be given a lot of money, because this grant is the 100,000 is for the 3 years. So if you do maybe hedgerows, it's going to be 1 time in 3 years. If it is mulch, it's going to be every year for 3 years, but you will not exactly how much you are going to be given from using that tool. And then the work plan, after now you have maybe partitioned your land to say, okay, this is where I'm going to do mulch, this is where I'm going to do compost. They're expecting you also to tell them what you are going to do where and when. So they have this template here. It is telling you, like in year 1, when do you expect to start? So it's like a work plan. That's the work plan now that you are writing. If you did apply, maybe you are going to be doing these practices in 2 APNs, you have to be showing that, okay, APN 1, this is what I'm doing, in APN 2, that this is what I'm doing, and tell them even the number of samples that you are going to take, and with the timing, because when they come out, they expect you, like, let's say you said, I'm going to apply mulch maybe from January to March. They want to be coming out and looking if you did apply mulch from January to March. So I think that is nearly everything, but all this you are getting just from the Wise Hive app, the Wise Hub portal. You can get all this, and then if you are doing this and probably you get stuck on the way, we are here to help. Like we said, we'll have an office time where you zoom in and then you can go into your tool if you have issues with the tool, and even look at your application as well. The award process, like I said, they're going to do the re-project, they're going to come back to you, and then you sign the memorandum and you can apply. So this is myself with Joel and Cody that can help, but we've some people are in Zoom, and I know that not from San Diego County. We have other UCC people who can help look at maybe your county, and then we have their names down here. You can ask them for help. I think that is all that I have, and I'll be open to questions.
This thing came up with a question that we had, let's see, last year.
Can you use
or
the
this
microphone,
year-
sir?
Excuse me.
And put it pretty close. It's kind of
Now,
sensitive.
this year, I had 3 days with no power, 4 days without power, and a recommendation never to take out the telephone lines if they are. What happened? And so I'm gonna have problems. In fact, yesterday, I lost my internet for maybe a half an hour. It just went away. So you want to do this over the internet, but sometimes in this area or areas like this, it's not going to function.
Yes.
So everything's going to be by internet. That doesn't work all the time.
Yes, the question is, or the comment is, why are we doing this fully 100%? Because some places they can probably lose connections. And I think that's a good question that we are capturing right now.
Yes, looking on this appendix, the very first page for the cropland compost application, the payment scenario is for on-farm produced compost. I don't produce any compost, but all around me are horse ranches. And I did this year bring in 8 truckload or dump loads of compost from this ranch. And it was 3 years old compost. Will this qualify as the compost, or do I need to have it tested, or what do I do about that?
Well, CDFA has already stated that there are, compost must be purchased from CDFA certified, areas. So they must have, and if they do not have that certification, it means it is not qualified compost being prepared. That's what
Yeah, I can see where that would seem like a wasted opportunity. But yeah, testing would also be necessary because you have to confirm whether it's greater than or less than a 1:11 ratio of carbon to nitrogen. So you couldn't just go ahead and use that resource. But as Oli said, the safest way is to go with the kind of confirmed facility. I'll pass did you have a follow-up on
I
that?
had a follow-up question. The compost, soil testing and compost testing, you had mentioned earlier, that you would provide that, or can we get that?
Yeah, so CDFA, once they find you, you are just going to indicate that you are going to do the soil test. Once they approve your funding, then they will pay for the soil samples year 1, year 2, and year 3. So, and when you apply here, they are going to ask you how many samples, and they will show you the money for the sample that they are going to pay, and they will include it in the budget too.
Prior to that, and let's say I don't get my application in time, I don't get funded, can you help me or guide me to somebody where I can get soil testing next week?
Any other, I think yes. How readable is the application on all computers? In during previous attempts to apply for a CDFA grant, my Mac did not read, could not read all of the information. It was a nightmare. And it was someone from MRCD that helped me on their PC. So. that's
I
my
think
question.
it's still a problem. I think it's still a problem.
Okay.
A little bit. I helped a farmer last week who was doing a sweep, and then the tool could not work in Mac. And we have reported that issue, and they were like, we have attended to it. But yeah, what I have seen last week, it doesn't seem like the problem is fixed yet.
So it's been 3 years now that it still hasn't been fixed. Okay.
Pardon me, does that problem apply kind of across the board with all different web browsers? It's really a Mac operating OS problem.
Yeah, I've seen it only in a MacBook, because I did like from my iPad, I opened it and it was really like I couldn't even scroll. But then when I was using my Windows, it was working. Like I think it's something that you need to attend to. And last year also we had a problem of the replan not really zooming in so much to see the maybe things in your farm. But at least we could see the houses and take them out because we are not going to apply compost in the house. But this year you cannot even zoom even beyond. So I just advise people just draw a polygon around your farm as best as you can. Because if you cannot see what is in the farm, there's nothing we can do. We cannot go and draw from outside and attach it. So we have to work with what we have.
2 questions. On the example you gave, the 7 acres, 52,000, is that money granted up front, and then you allocate it for 3 years? The 52,000 is one time.
No, so the money shows you that for the duration of the project, you are going to get the 52,000, but this grant, you have to use the money and ask for refund. So it's on reimbursement, reimbursement, like you buy stuff and then with the receipt, you attach and then they give you back the money. But it shows that in the 3 years that you are going to do this practice, they will be giving you in total 52,000.
Okay, thanks. And is that money taxable or is it?
Yeah, that question keeps coming. No, the money is not taxable. Yeah.
Today, this year it's not taxable.
I have one
Yes.
follow-up question. Earlier in the presentation today, in terms of organic matter in the soil, I made a note, maybe I misunderstood. talked about a range of 1 to 6%. Your presentation talks about address that. And then my situation, sure avocado crop, it's possible I might have 20%. How do you get tested before you start?
I think probably we are going to go with CDFA requirement because it's 20% and more. That's something that, I mean, if you have 8%, they will still fund you. And then to know if you are more than 20% or less than 20%, that's the good thing. They're not asking you to do that because their app, in the app, the replan that I showed you, once you have your APN, it will tell you if it is more than 20%. If it is less than 20%, you proceed, but if it is more than 20%, you won't. So I think that's, again, something that I advise the growers that go to the replan, check that out before you start applying, because you might work on the application and then you go to the replan and it tells you are more than 20%. Start with that. Look at maybe try to do that plan, see where you apply what before you attend to the application.
The 1.6% organic matter is for most soils. However, CDFA says, hey, you can do up to 20, but the maximum they allow you is to push for the 20% organic matter build up. And okay, so they suggesting, yes, you can push up to 20, but not more than that. They are saying it is not actually possible, to get a soil organic matter build to more than 20%. That's what it is.
Yes, it would be miraculous. Really great soil in San Diego is around 6 to 8%. That soil has been worked for years at a dairy with compost on it. So it won't be an elimination factor for you.
Yes, sir.
Just a technical question for the doctor. During your presentation, I don't know if I understood this right. Nitrogen from the organic material makes nitrogen not available to the plants, or what did I miss?
Oh, okay. When you have got crop residues added to the soil, that residue would actually initially immobilize the nutrient that is in the soil, meaning it will attract to its body and keep it there. So it has to be until further when the residue decomposes and then release what is contained in it. I think that is the right, thing for any kind of material that comes in. If it is not actually keeping it there, it won't keep it for the next available main crop to make use of what is mineralized. It would be leaching, it would be lost before you would be planting, say, broccoli or something else. Yes, that's what it is. It will absorb and keep it into it. It's just something like, hey, if you have got cotton and put it somewhere, it attracts, water and keep it in there. But of course, when it decomposes and is lost, it will release it. That's what it is.
Yes, we have questions in the chat. I think just 2 minutes on the floor and then 2 minutes on the chat, so we don't forget guests in the online. Yeah, Cody can repeat your questions, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Okay, no one unmuted. So we have 2 questions. Are the verification requirements the records that growers must keep in order to prove they have completed the practice?
Yes, so yes, once you apply, if it's a mulch, once you apply the mulch, there is in the Appendix A that I have shown you, like how they want you to keep that record. So if it is a 2-inch, you need to like put a ruler in the 2-inch, measure the 2-inch and take a picture with the coordinate that will show that you did apply for the 2-inch. That and or they can reach out to you and say we are coming to your farm. So you have to keep the record, but bear in mind that they might come to your farm too for confirmation or verification.
And then two folks had this question, if referring to the fact that in order to apply, you need 3 years of management and crop history on your land. They're asking if you've been farming 2 years, are you disqualified from applying, or can some of your crop history be listed as fallow?
I think my question is, if it was there crop in it in the first year? If there was crop, I don't think it's fallow. But what I advise people is, say, if you bought a land maybe a year ago, but you still want to apply for this, maybe you can contact the people who sold you the land before to ask about what they have been doing and document that. If you can't get them, I guess if it's an avocado is 10-year-old avocados, just describe the best way you can.
That's it from the chat right now, unless someone wants to come up.
Yes, the mic.
Yes, my question is,
the problem with mulching avocado growth is getting the mulch to the trees. If we don't have a mechanism to do that, then most of these growers aren't going to do it. And to be able to have a device that a grower could use or rent or do something with on these very steep roads would require a device that they could put behind a tractor on a 3-point hitch that could then allow the grower to use a hose or something to blow the mulch out. If you have programs like this and you don't have the mechanism to put it on, then those growers can never take advantage of something like this because the labor eats them up. And I was wondering, do we get reimbursed for any equipment costs and or labor costs for any of these programs?
So the way I understood it from this amount that they are giving to the farmer, they are saying, for instance, you want to do mulch, they don't expect a mulch to cost $2,500 per ton. So they feel like they have put in a lot of money for the grower to also ask for help, like labor as well. And even if they are asking the receipts back, they really are not expecting you, like if, let's say you bought a mulch and it costed $600 and you applied it the way they wanted you to apply it. They're not going to give you $600, but they're going to give you $2,500, taking in consideration that you bought that mulch and then you applied it as well. So some people can use the money sometimes to buy the implement that can blow or spread the practice. So you can do that from the money that they give you. You still need to give the receipts, but the receipts should not be, it's not expected that is going to be the same amount of money that they're going to give back to you.
so if you give them a receipt for $100, you're gonna get reimbursed for $2,000?
Yes, that's how I understand it.
And why do you give them the receipt?
To show that you bought the mulch offsite.
I think, in any kind of application, there are always, a glitch, something that they may overlook. As technical assistants, what we can do is actually take this question and then ask further if there is anything they can consider. That we can do it. So Esther, if you take this note, and then ask CDFA what they think about. Of course, if you have got things to apply, if you don't have the mechanism to apply, it may not be a funding approach. So we will ask that question.
Yes, and I think also for the small farmers, we have some, like working on this grant, we've seen that some people are struggling with this. So I think our office have the small compost spreader that you can ask for to rent out, like you take it out, you don't pay us anything, but you can just go to our office, get it, use it, and then bring it back to us. But some people would get the money and buy the compost spreader as well, but they will get the amount of money that they requested.
If they can drive it down to Imperial, we can lend it free. We don't charge.
That's a short drive. What is that, 3 hours?
So then a follow-up question would be, if I'm going to cover crop, say 5 acres of fallow land. If I'm going to cover crop 5 acres of fallow land, then in that grant, I can give CDFA, for example, send CDFA a receipt for a rototiller. Is this the way I can purchase a rototiller? Because I'm not going to be breaking up that 5 acres just by hand.
Yes, I think that's exactly what I'm saying. When you get this money, they're going to give you the total amount of money per acre that they said they will give you. If, for instance, you are applying mulch and you use $100, you're going to send them the receipt for $100. They don't care about what else you bought, because they are expecting that even if you bought the mulch for $100, you are still going to spray. So some people hire people to spray. Some people buy implements that help them spray. That is fine.
Okay, and then that would include the labor as well.
So you are not going to submit anything to CDFA to say this is how much labor I have worked on this. You are just going to send the receipt and the tag or the geotag picture that they're asking for. That's all they need. And when they come back to your farm, they're just going to look at whether you did apply for that. I mean, you apply that much. They're not going to ask you, how did you apply it? How many hours? How many? No, they're not. This is the state water question. But for healthy soils, that is not needed. So people take the money and buy implements if that money is good to apply implement. Even when you send the receipt, you are not sending the implementation, or you are not going to send the tool for application. You are going to send that I bought the mulch and this is the receipt of buying the mulch. They just want to see that you really indeed purchase the mulch and that you have applied it in the farm the way they want it applied.
Or the seed for the cover crop.
Yes,
right? Okay.
yes.
Got it.
There was another question from the chat about land being fallow. Can they apply if the land has been fallow for 10 plus years? Does that count to apply?
Sure.
Yes, they can apply. I mean, as long as in the 3 years they're going to have the, they're going to grow crops or grow trees, they can apply too.
I think the caveat there is you can't clear land that has never been farmed before for this. That would not be considered fallow land. But if it's been lying idle, it's great that you're putting it back into use. I know that there's more to talk about, and we can definitely talk one-on-one afterwards, or for those of you online, feel free to reach out by email or call us. But we're about 15 minutes over. So I just want to thank everybody for attending today, and thank you CANR for organizing this event along with us, and really encourage all of you to apply if it seems like it's economically beneficial to your farm. So thanks so much for coming today. Cody will be sharing links to all the resources shared, answers to the questions asked, and ways to continue to stay involved. So look out for that email. Thanks so much.